Nope, I'm not done yet. Alright, so this video was supposed to come out shortly after I released my first old Creepypastas video last October. Let me know, by the way, if you want to see another one of those, because I really enjoyed making that first one, and I feel like there's a lot of other old Creepypastas I could take a look at, but I'll leave that up for you to decide if you want to see a second installment to that series. The point is, this video was supposed to come out at a time that would have made a lot more sense for it too, but obviously other projects took precedence and it ended up getting pushed back, but you know, I'm a firm believer in better late than never, so I figured why not give it to you now. I'm going to assume anybody watching this video probably knows all about what both Doki Literature Club and Creepypastas are, and so it doesn't need me going into detail on any of that. But for anyone who doesn't, I already have one video up on this channel all about Creepypastas and 3 dedicated to Doki Literature Club, so you can just check those out at your leisure. The main thing I want to draw attention to as it relates to both are some of the similarities I detected between DDLC, the game, and video game creepypastas, which is a common subject matter for those short stories. I can't remember if I went over this or not in the first creepypasta video I did, but I actually kind of missed the boat on those things' popularity back when they were in their heyday. The fact that I was very young and actually found them scary probably contributed to that. So I only really started getting into them until much later. And I really started only getting into them after I had already played and was busy making my video on Doki Literature Club. And after doing so, and after comparing the two, I noticed some similarities between the game and video game creepypastas like Bend Around, Godzilla NES, and even Sonic.exe that I think are interesting and might not be entirely coincidental. I don't know for sure, like I can't confirm anything, but just here's some of the things that I noticed that I think are worth pointing out. For anyone familiar with the game, which should be most of you, you would know what I'm referring to. You know that it starts off as this kind of seemingly innocuous video game that you play for a while, and then as you do, more and more dark subject matter and things that you wouldn't normally expect from the genre keeps on cropping up into it, until eventually the rug is pulled out from under all of us and the true colors are revealed and it's all scary and weird and, you know, it's the game. It's the game we all know. It's what everybody talks about when they bring it up. And, yeah, does that sound familiar to any of you? In stories like Bend Around, NES Godzilla, so on and so forth, there's probably a bunch that I'm forgetting, but just these 3 are the ones that immediately come to mind. You get a lot of that same thing where it's just like some person discovers this seemingly unassuming copy of this video game, usually one from their childhood or something like that. They play it for a while and then they realize, like, what's going on? This isn't how things are supposed to go. There's all this weird stuff happening, this weird scary stuff happening, and then it keeps going and escalating until eventually it just goes full-blown turbo spoopy mode and everybody's like, oh, scary, hyper-realistic. You know how it is. A lot of them are crap, but they do have those tropes in them and those common identifying characteristics, a lot of which can also be found in DDLC. I think it's really interesting and also adds a little bit more onto some of what I said about Doki in my review on it, because if you remember from part 2 of that video, or review or whatever, you would know that there's a part towards the end where I comment on how interesting I find it that in this video game, you're not playing as the main character, you are the main character, because eventually it's revealed, spoilers, I guess, to anyone who isn't familiar, that, you know, one of the characters in the game knows all about you and they like know who you are, and they are after you specifically, not the person you're playing as in the game. And I can now add further onto that because, once again, that is a very common trope in video game creepypastas. The breaking of the fourth wall, you know, the shattering of the invisible boundary between fantasy and reality, where suddenly the game directs its attention towards the player or the main character in the story, and it's always like this big oh shit moment where it's just like, it knows that it's a game and it knows that I'm playing in blah 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 some supernatural entities and happening it or something like that. It's kind of the same thing in DDLC, and it now allows me to look at that game and that oh shit bombshell moment through a new lens. All of a sudden, you're not just the main character of this story, you're a creepypasta main character. You are Tom from Sonic.exe, you're Zachary from NES Godzilla, you're I don't know what the guy's name at Ben Drowned is, but you're him, and I just find it I find it cool, but I also should make it clear that I have no idea if any of this was intentional. I have no real evidence or hard-hitting proof of any kind that video game creepypastas were a direct inspiration for DDLC. But I still think it's worth pointing out that these similarities do exist, because while they may not have been conscious inspirations, they could have served as subconscious inspirations, or it might have just been one giant coincidence. Still though, I would say that the similarities do make me appreciate DDLC a little bit more, even on kind of a different level than it used to, because to be totally honest, I kind of really like creepypastas. Yes, I missed the boat on their popularity by about 10 years, and yes, it is 100% a guilty pleasure since a lot of them are terrible, but the ones that aren't masterpieces or anything, but I think that there are some legitimately good little horror stories, you know, buried amongst the crap and the edginess and the melodrama that a lot of them are comprised of. And that's not to say that the actual halfway decent ones don't have a lot of, you know, edge and melodrama too. It's used a little more sparingly, and I think is mixed in with some genuinely effective, you know, horror and eerie elements to them. It also doesn't hurt that I like a good urban legend, and I think that's kind of what creepypastas are to me, and I think a lot of other people. Modern day urban legends, well, closer to modern day than a lot of older urban legends. Either that, or they're like a modernized version of those scary stories to tell in the dark books, if you remember what those are. You know, the collections of short horror stories with the really creepy illustrations. Yeah, they're kind of like that, but for, again, not necessarily the modern day, because a lot of them are over 10 years old at this point, but closer to the modern day, in the internet age at least. Anyway, my appreciation for creepypastas as kind of modern day urban legends sort of extends to my appreciation for DDLC, as if that is kind of an interactive creepypasta, then in a very similar way, it is a bit of an interactive urban legend, which I guess would just be an ARG, but like DDLC does it in a more compressed manner. The way that it functions and the way that it was discovered, its rise to popularity, and the way that people kept talking about it and passing it around to their friends, it very much functions like a classic ghost story. It lures you in with its shiny veneer, making you think it's going to be something cute and harmless, and then, once it's got you, it starts getting darker and darker, and the subject matter starts getting more and more intense until eventually it reveals its true colors, and then it becomes about like surviving this nightmare that you've put yourself in, and yet against all logic and against all reason, you keep playing because you just have to know what happens next. And then, as the journey comes to an end, as you're almost free from this terror, it locks you out. You can never play it again, unless you uninstall and reinstall it. But, you know, most people aren't going to do that. That's not really the idea. It gives you one opportunity to experience it, it leaves its mark, and then it just fades away. And then what happens after you've survived this nightmare? You tell people about it. You tell them that they have to play it, that it's the scariest game you've ever seen, and that everyone has to experience it. And that is eerily similar to what these stories that I've been mentioning all throughout the video are really about. Because good or bad, what they ultimately revolve around is the continuous cycle of ownership of the games in question. They're never destroyed. The entities that inhabit them are never truly defeated. It's all left open-ended. It's all left kind of ambiguous. What happens to the game and any future players next? And again, in a very similar manner, but in the real world this time, what happens to the next person that decides to play Doki Doki Literature Club? I mean, nothing catastrophic or anything, I hope, but you know, it's a muted real world example of these fictional, sensational stories. And in its own way, I think that's pretty cool. Hey, this is just me popping in at the end to say that the search for questions for the upcoming Q&A I'm going to do is still ongoing. So if you want to ask me anything, just find this video on the channel. I'll link it down below for convenience, and you can ask me as many questions as you want. The deadline for when the cutoff date for stopping me no longer accepting questions has shifted a couple times. I think it originally was like April 21st, and then I shifted it to April 30th. And I'm going to do that again because April 30th is only a couple days from when this video goes up. So I'm just going to give you guys until the end of May. Yes, you have an extra month, and that'll give me plenty of time to put out more videos. You can come up with whatever you'd like. Again, just ask me as many questions as you want, and I'll probably answer them. Thank you for watching. Have a great day, and until next time, see ya.